Welcome everyone to another CTC software webinar. My name is Sean Zerbis, Technical Evangelist here at CTC, and today we're going to talk about plumbing code calculations using a BIM project suite collection of tools, Spreadsheet Link, and Schedule Excel. So let's quickly kind of cover what it is we're going to talk about and why. Revit, being a fantastic building information modeling tool, sometimes has trouble with some of those more complicated calculations. And this is especially noticeable when you're trying to run like cross-category maths. You know, how many rooms do I have on certain levels and what's the occupancy of those, or how many rooms that are associated to certain whatever, a lot of different things. And then when I'm trying to tie that into plumbing fixture counts and stuff like that, that can be really annoying. And so when we're doing this, in a lot of cases, especially like in today's example, the plumbing code calculations, we really usually take this out to an Excel environment or a spreadsheet environment, and then we run our calculations there to create the graphic layout that we want, because Revit really can't do that very well either. And then we manually input a bunch of information and then turn around and print that stuff to a flat image or link it to a DWG and then bring that back into Revit. And we do this stuff all manually. But we can do this incredibly far more efficiently by using some tools that we're going to talk about today, which is Spreadsheet Link and Schedule Excel. And in today's example, I'm going to take you through the settings on exactly how to configure this and how you can calculate plumbing fixture counts. Now, if you're doing something else, maybe a little similar, maybe a little different, whatever, we're going to go step by step through this process. Now, I want to be clear, today is not a demo. Today is very much a training on how to do the things that we do. If you want to see a demo of this workflow, the introduction to Spreadsheet Link and the introduction to Schedule Excel demonstrate this workflow. And that's great and all, but I want to show you how to do it. So we're going to go through how to establish a repeatable workflow. We're going to generate reusable Excel templates that we can use over and over and over again. We're going to leverage some Excel formulas, and I use the term Excel here because this is what I'm going to be using today in my example. Certainly you can use other spreadsheet programs as well. But we're going to use Excel formulas to drive calculations and some graphics. And then we're going to take those graphics that result from Excel, and we're going to bring that back in to the Revit environment for use on Revit sheets. I'm going to go through that full workflow start to finish today. And hopefully you can pick something up from this and you can leverage this in your own workflows with your own Excel files. Before I dig in, I want to show you exactly what we're going to be doing. Okay, just a little screenshot here. In Spreadsheet Link, we are going to be generating an export of rooms. You can't quite see it on the screen right now, but we're going to generate an export of rooms using level area, a value that I've made called area per person CTC, and a value that I've made called occupancy CTC. And we're going to run some maths here. I'm going to use a little formula to drive based on the area and the area per person, how many people are in a space, rounding up or down. In my case, doing a round down calculation. I'll show you how I did that. And then I have all these extra tabs down here at the bottom that came from Excel. They in no way came from Revit. This is all Excel-based stuff. And so I'm going to be taking that information and bringing this back into Revit in basically this exact layout as what we would call a Revit schedule. This doesn't look like a normal Revit schedule, but Revit's brain is going to think it's going to be a schedule. We're going to bring that in and drop it onto a sheet. And we're going to have all the numbers in this spreadsheet from Excel automatically filled out and ready for us to use. While I'm going through this today, if you have questions, I encourage you to throw them in the questions window. I will be watching those and trying to answer them as live as I possibly can. I also will stick around at the end of this discussion today and answer any questions I couldn't answer in line. So by all means, throw questions out there and I'll see what I can do to make sure I answer them. Now, since I'm not a big, individual on death by PowerPoint, let's just go in and check this out live. Okay, so I'm going to jump into Revit. I'm going to open up a project here. And let's see, this little office building that I've got, I'm going to basically be doing occupancy calculations in here with my custom parameters. That's about the only thing that you have to have in your project that's custom is those 2 parameter values that I've got. You can, of course, use whatever ones you want and just follow along with this if you want to or whatever. But I'm going to use those two values to run the maths. In my code plan, my life safety plan, or whatever you want to name it, you can see that I've got some rooms out here, and I've got some room tags pre-placed. Now, if I select this room, you can tell that I've got an area. That's a built-in Revit parameter. And I have an area per person CTC. This is one that I made. This is for me to be able to enter a value. This is currently not a shared parameter. It's just a project parameter. It's not shared because I'm driving this particular value with the occupancy category room key, schedule key. And this way, when I switch out to different types of rooms, and I've pulled this list from an older IBC, I think it was IBC 2007. Doesn't really matter. It's just a list of names and square footage values here. But as I'm using this calculation, it drives that number right there. So a user can choose the occupancy category by name, and it drives in the area per person requirement, that load factor. You can use whatever terminology it is you want to use. But I have here an area and an area per person requirement, and I want to do some basic maths. I want to take the area and divide it by area per person and have it driven automatically into the occupancy CTC parameter value. Now, I'm choosing not to use the built-in Revit occupancy parameter value because that is text and it's trash, and I can't do other calculations in some cases off of that. And I like having actual numbers or integers or areas or things like that. So I've made my own parameter. And I leverage this in other workflows. You'll see these workflows coming up later on, and where I need an actual number or integer predictable value coming out. So that's why I've made my own parameter. This is not required for this workflow. It's just how I've chosen to do it. So what am I going to do? Well, I want to do my math. And yes, I know I can do a calculated value in a schedule, but that doesn't automatically drive into the room tag. And yes, I know that I can do a calculated value in a room tag, but that could potentially not match my schedule. And in both of those cases, that value does not actually exist on the room. So it's not really BIM, it's fake calculations happening externally. The room doesn't know about it, which means none of my other consulting engineers can know about that value by checking the property of my room object. If I delete the schedule, the data's gone. If I delete the room tag, the data doesn't really exist. I want my room to know what its occupancy is. And that's part of the reason for this workflow. But I'm not doing occupancy just for the sake of doing occupancy. I want to then leverage that to figure out, based on code compliancy calcs, how many water closets, lavs, drinking fountains, urinals, whatever, do I need on this floor or in a certain smoke compartment, or, you name it. How do you want to calculate that out? We need to find a way to do that, and it's beyond just occupancy. So I'm using this workflow for two purposes. I'm using this so that I can get my occupancies done automatically, pushed into my room elements so that other team members can leverage that, but I'm also using this to get my code compliancy calcs. And you can expand upon this if you want to. How many parking spaces do you need? How large do your egress openings have to be total on a floor, whatever. You can do all kinds of stuff with maths with this workflow that I'm not going to be demonstrating today. Oh, and by the way, this is, of course, being recorded, so you can always come back to this later in case you miss something. However, I do recommend, if you're going to try to follow along or you're going to try and take notes, by all means do that, because I find that I remember more when I take notes on things. Okay, so where do we go for this? And I'm going to show you how to get these tools later if you don't have them yet. But from the CTC software tab here at the top, this is where our suites install. I'm going to go here to the BIM project suite. I'm going to pull some things off the ribbon just so it leaves me a little bit more space here. BIM project suite is where I'm going. The tools in green. And the two tools that I'm going to focus on today is Spreadsheet Link. This is the one that lets me take data from my model, pull it to a spreadsheet, run calculations, and round trip data back in. The other tool that I'm going to use near the end of this workflow that I'm setting up for is this one here, Schedule Excel. This one lets me take an Excel file and basically build a Revit schedule from it, a graphical Revit schedule from an Excel heavily formatted environment, okay? So I'm using this for the data exchange and the calculations, and I'm using this for the graphic import so I can get the representation of what I want. All right, starting with this here, Spreadsheet Link. I'm going to open up Spreadsheet Link. I'm going to start this workflow by just showing you how to get the data, okay? I'm going to go in here for a fully repeatable workflow. I do not recommend using schedules. That's great for one-off stuff, for quick data entry, but that is not how I build 100% repeatable workflows from project to project. What I want to do instead is I want to go find my categories. I'm going to look for all the different Revit categories here. I'm looking for rooms. That's my first one. I'm going to grab rooms. I'm going to pull this out. It's going to take it a second to grab all of the rooms in my project. Doesn't take very long, just a little bit. And then it gives me a list of all of the available parameters that relate to my rooms. And I care about grouping these by level. That's how I'm going to be doing my code calculations, is by level. And you can certainly do this by smoke compartment if you have a parameter for that, or department, or you name it. You choose the parameters you want to group this by. In my case, I'm going to group this by level. Personal choice. I then want to get the area of these rooms. The area per person CTC, you can see I've got a few other parameters in here that probably came from other workflows in the past that I just haven't cleaned up before, but I'm using the one that's specifically called out as CTC. And my occupancy parameter, occupancy CTC. I'm not using occupancy, I'm using the CTC property here. This is the integer-based value, or the number-based value, so I can have decimal points of people in a space if I really cared to, and that's how Revit's going to store it. You can certainly go through and include more values. If you want to validate visually things like the room name and room number, by all means, go in there and do that if you really need that. In my case, for my workflow, I don't need the data. I don't need to see it. All I need to know is the maths are happening correctly. So I'm going to basically remove these two because I don't really want them in my list. I want just the 4 major fields that I care about. How I'm grouping it, in my case by level, the area per person, what I'm doing the maths on, and my occupancy parameter where I'm dumping the result of my maths, okay? Now, with this workflow, I'm going to check this calculated option in front of occupancy. You see, the reason why I'm going to do this is because if I go here and I put in equals, say, 1 plus 1, right? It's basic math. It'll do a calculation, and I can choose to manually autofill this down. But every single time I run this workflow, I'm going to have a different number of rooms because I'm going to be using this on different projects. So when you check the calculate option here in front of a field, it's because you are intentionally putting in a formula that you want to be repeated on every element that Spreadsheet Link has found. So when I check this box, it's going to actually take and autofill this all the way down to the very last entry of whatever's in this list, and then it'll stop. So it's all done. Now, 1 plus 1 is not really what I want to do. I want to do equals this cell. This is just like using any spreadsheet program, right? This cell divided by this cell. And then when I hit enter, it does that maths all the way down, autofills. In this case, you're seeing I'm getting sort of an error. Pound value is what Excel will do, or a lot of spreadsheet programs will do, when it can't understand how to interpret the maths. You see, over here, when I've exported this data from Revit, it says 430 space SF. See, I'm using an imperial model, which has inches and feet. And so in this case, square feet is my area measurement value, and it's coming out of square feet. If I was using a metric project, it might be m squared, m, superscript 2 or something like that. This isn't really very conducive to math. Well, I could, in my formula, get more complicated and do things like trimming the right, do like a right 3-character trim, whatever, and then do the math based on that. But that gets complicated. And it also isn't very sustainable if I was to, say, do something with a length value, especially in imperial measurements where it's feet and inches, right? Try and trim off the feet, space dash space, values here, fractional inches, and get a decimal value back. It's not very convenient at all. What is convenient is simply checking this hide unit symbol option here at the bottom of your available parameters. What this will do is for every parameter that you've grabbed that has a unit of measure, this program, Spreadsheet Link, will take the unit of measure, strip it off the end, and put it up here at the top so you can know what it is. So when I check this option, it's going to give me back just the numerical value here with square feet up at the top. And over here for the decimal, for the feet and inches, it gives me back decimal feet. Far more convenient for the maths that we want to run. Now, I don't need perimeter, so I'm going to strip that away. I'm just going to stick with my occupancy stuff here. And now I can do whatever I want. Equals this, divide by this, and I get a result, right? And it runs that all the way down, except for in cases where I have a non-occupiable space, one where I haven't assigned an occupancy category. It doesn't know how many people, how many square foot required per person. So in this case, it doesn't know what to do. And so we have to build in some extra logic here. This is where a little bit of Excel knowledge comes into play. And by the way, if you wanted to, you could certainly save this spreadsheet out to Excel or whatever your native spreadsheet editing program is, and you can leverage that and its heads-up displays to be able to far more easily write your formulas. I'm going to do this here in Excel today because, well, I have a high comfort level with Excel. And I also remember all my formulas. So I'm just going to do it live right here. I'm going to put in here if error. The if error function in Excel lets you pass something to it. And then if there is an error, like that pound value that was in there, I'm going to tell it what to put in place of that pound value. I'm going to say put nothing, put quote, quote, which means a null value, an empty value. And when I change this, now nothing really changes up in the top half, but if I pull this down here, you'll notice that where there originally was those pound values in non-occupiable spaces, well, now it's empty. It puts nothing there. And when I push this back into Revit, it will put nothing back into Revit as opposed to putting zeros back into Revit. Because I want rooms that are non-occupiable to have nothing in their occupancy CTC value. So at this point, I could be done right with this. I could do my occupancy calculations and just apply this back to Revit. But really, I don't want to have, decimal points of people in a space. What I really want is I want this to be rounded to the nearest whole person. And so inside this function here where I'm doing the maths, I'm going to tell it to actually go ahead and round this some way, either round using native rounding or round up or round down, but I'm going to control exactly how this works. For this little example, I'm going to do just a basic round up, always rounding up to the nearest whole person. Okay, so I'm going to do round up. I'm going to put in the same maths as before, this divided by this. I wouldn't have had to have deleted that, but I did. And then in the roundup function, you have to tell it how many decimal places you want. And I'm going to put 0 decimal places. So if there's an error of doing this round up function, if it can't do the maths, it can't round up, it can't do anything, it's going to put nothing. But when it does the maths, it's going to do round up D4 divided by E4 to 0 decimal places. And when I hit enter, I did something wrong. What did I do wrong? Did I spell something wrong? Goodness sakes. There's always something, right? Round. Oh, I didn't spell round correctly. This is part of why it's really convenient to sometimes do this in Excel and you don't misspell something, right? It didn't know what that round up function was, so it yelled at me. In this case, now I've got the round up function D4 divided by E4, and it actually auto increments this. It doesn't standard autofill all the way down. Here in this case where it can't do the maths, it does nothing, but it does my calculation, right? You can make this math thing as detailed as you'd like it to be. You can do an if statement inside of here if the round down of this, or if the math of this is less than 1, then round up to the nearest 1 or make it 1. Otherwise, round down to the nearest person. I have an example that I'll run for you in a minute here that does exactly that, right? But that is effectively the beginning of how we do this basic workflow. Okay, so at this point, if I really wanted this to be applied back to my model, I would simply do apply active worksheet, and this dumps back into my model, right? It'll write to every one of these rooms by their element ID, the data value here, and it's done. But I wanted to build up a little bit more of a complicated workflow than just this, because I want to take and total up all of the different levels over here and figure out what my total occupancy is on level 1 and level 4 and basement level and a couple of other things. And I also want to put that into a table. Now, coincidentally, I already have a table that's pre-built. In fact, let me start this here. Save my settings. I'm just going to save this out real quick. We'll just put this on my desktop for now so I can recall this in a minute. I'm going to show you how you can build a really involved workflow here. I'm going to save this out as my room calculations. Actually, let's call this out as plumbing calculations. Plumbing fixture calculations. Did I spell that right? I think I did. Nope, I didn't. Calculations. There we go. All right. So I'm saving this, in my case, to my desktop. Yes, you can save this to a project directory or a network location, or you choose where you want to put this, but this SL settings file is what I'm going to use for the main part of this workflow here. So I'm going to save this out. Okay, that's been saved. Now, I'm going to basically reset this entire thing here. Let's close this out. I'm going to open up Spreadsheet Link again, and I want to open up a spreadsheet that already pre-exists. This is an Excel file in my case. I'm just going to go over here and do open. Open this file. I happen to have this saved on my C drive in my little demo folder because I do this kind of thing quite frequently here. And here is my original file, basically. Okay, it's got different methods of calculations for different counties or regions or states or you name it that I might work in. It has these things all laid out here. So water closet method number 1, the one that I'm going to fill out today in front of you for just water closets, I have the different levels of my building. This is stacked up to 5 levels, and I could add as many as I really wanted. It takes the level, and I want to total up how many people exist on that level. Now, this in my normal workflow would be something that I would go into Revit and I would have it total it up for me, and I'd come back here manually and type in, oh, there's 75 people in the basement. There are 200 people on level 1. And then as I type that in, you can see it's giving me division over here. It's basically doing a roundup function of this divided by 2, rounded up to the nearest whole person, because I can't have half a person for calculations. And then it takes whatever the maths are for this, and it, in this case, is ratio of 1 water closet for every 500 people. It does the rounding up of this divided by 500, and it gives me a value. This is a pre-existing spreadsheet that I've had in my portfolio of stuff for a long time. But I want to integrate this with a real Revit workflow where I don't have to manually type this number in, where it does it automatically. Just I run a process, I get my occupancies, dump it in my rooms, and this fills itself out in a second. How do I do that? Well, let's go back and let's just load those settings that we just saved. I just did all the calculations for rooms. I told it what fields I wanted. I told it how to work. Let's load those settings from a file. So that's out here on my desktop. Okay, and there's my desktop. There's my plumbing fixture calculations that I just saved today. And it's going to add to this already pre-existing Excel workbook my rooms calculations here. Now, this workbook doesn't know how to leverage that yet, but it does exist, right? I've got method 1 calculation over here. I've got method 2 calculation for other things. I've got method 3, where I've got all these different things, but now I've got a rooms tab. And that's fantastic, right? Now, because I also want to know the exact level names of my building, and I kind of want to have them stacked in a proper order here. I don't want it to be alphabetical, because alphabetical doesn't always work out in my favor, right? We know that, basement, level 1, level 2, level 10, whatever, roof level, they might not always just alphabetically sort super clean. So what I need to do is I need to figure out what their elevation is and sort by that. So I'm going to add to this workflow another tab. I'm going to tell it to pull my levels in as well. This will let me get the exact level names, and it will let me get their elevation so I can sort by that. So I'm going to go grab levels. There's a new tab in here now. I'm pulling rooms and I'm pulling levels at the same time into a pre-existing Excel workbook all at once. Now, with my levels, I want to know what the name is. Okay, let's go find name. There it is, name. Okay, so it tells me level 4, 1, 2, 3, roof, basement, parapet, right? This sorted alphabetically might be great. It might be squirrely, whatever. Also, the parapet level isn't a real level. It's just a building. It's just a reference level. So there's a property here called building story. And if I leverage this in Revit, where I can mark something as, yes, it's actually a building level versus just a reference level, not a building story, I can use that. And I'm also going to care about what its elevation is. Okay, there's the elevation. Now, once again, this here, a little tricky to sort because Excel is going to interpret this as text. And so I'm going to hide the unit symbols again so that I get the true integer values. And now I can go here to my filtering, and I can tell it to filter by anything where building story is actually true. And you'll see parapet went away now. It doesn't exist because it's not a building story. And I'm also going to go here to my sorting, and I'm going to tell this to sort by the elevation. So now it goes basement, level 1, 2, 3, 4, roof, right, in the order in which they are in the building physically, well, dimensionally. Here's a cool trick. I don't have to include building story to actually filter by it. The way that this works, I could choose to remove building story from the actual list there. It's okay. My filtering, unlike a Revit schedule, I can still filter by building story. I can filter by every parameter that exists because Spreadsheet Link reads all of it, whether I include it in my actual data export or not. So here, I now have the list of level names. I have their exact order set up here correctly. And now on my water closet calculations over here, let's use method number 1. I want this level name to directly pull its name from my list of available levels. Let me pull this a little bit wider yet so I can see that tab over there. So I can go into here and I can do what's called either a VLOOKUP or an index or a lot of different things. I'm going to use the index command. I'm going to index an entire list of things, okay? I'm going to index the entire levels area over here. I'm just going to grab a bunch of them. I don't really care. You can go 100 levels if you want to. If you commonly do 100, you can have this thing pull from the full list. So I'm going to index that full set of things, and I'm going to look at index number 1 here. And I believe this should, yep, look at that. Basement level gets pulled in. Right? So it automatically goes, the first thing in that list is the basement level. Now I'm going to do a little bit of manual work here because I'm going to copy and paste this here and say index my levels for the second level in the list. I don't care what the name is, just pull the second name. I'm going to come down here, do the exact same thing, paste, use the third thing in the list, so level 1, 2, paste, I think I did 3, 4, there we go, and then 5 here. And you could do this as many times as you needed to. I'm doing this in a very manual way. There's, of course, more automated ways of doing this. My roof level I'm going to intentionally exclude because I'm probably not going to be putting plumbing fixtures on my roof level, so I'm just going to exclude that one. Okay, but now I know what the exact level names are coming out of my project. Exactly what they are. Now, let's figure out exactly how many people exist on that level, okay? So I know over here the rooms level, and I know what the occupancy is. So what I'm going to have to do is run some kind of a sum. I want to sum up all the things, but I only want to sum these things up if the level name matches whatever level I'm looking at, right? So let me just reference this real quick to make sure I'm doing the right maths here. Sum if, look up something, get a cell value, and then what am I summing? Okay, so the way that this works is we go equals sum if, that's a command in Excel, sum if, and I'm going to tell it what range to look at for the matching value. So I'm going to say go over here to levels, and go here to rooms, and pull the entire level column here, rooms C. So sum if the value that's found in the C column matches the value that is found here on this tab. And what I want it to do the summing from is the F column. Okay? So what this will do is it'll say, hey, if the level is basement level, then go over and grab the occupancy value and sum that all together. And in this case, I get 76, right? So I can copy this. In fact, I could probably just cheat and go copy, paste. But it's going to screw my formatting up. All right, I'm going to undo that. I'm going to go back and just copy the value from this. Oops, undo, copy. And I'm going to paste into here. And I'm going to tell it to reference a different cell. Instead of A3, I'm going to reference A5, just because that's this cell right here, level 1. So A5, right? And so now it does a new total there. And I can do the same thing here. Paste this in and reference A7. Okay, delete 7. Okay, there we go. 230 people on this level. So, I'm getting all the maths over here because this is just taking the resulting value of this, and it's giving me divide by 2 for an equal number of men and women, and then it's doing the maths based on that. I've already written this because this is already in my pre-existing layout. Okay, paste this inside of here, and I'm going to reference another cell. What is this? 9, and this one. paste is going to be 10. Delete. Nope, 11. Sorry, 11. There we go. So I get all my calculations, and you can repeat this for as many things as you want. You do this step once. Okay. Now I'm going to save this spreadsheet out since I've already done all the maths. I don't need to have end users do this over and over again. I just have to do this once. And I'm going to save this spreadsheet someplace. I'm going to save this here back to my desktop. Let's go desktop. Where's it at? There's desktop. I was already there. Look at that. Save my spreadsheet out as plumbing fixed template. Plumbing fixed template as an XLX file. As I save that out, I can tell it if I want to open it or not. Yeah, let's go ahead and open this up. I'm going to say yes to this, and this is going to open up in Excel, real Excel, because that's my native spreadsheet editing program here. I'm going to do one special thing here because I want this to be a truly repeatable workflow. I'm going to go to the rooms, and I'm going to delete all of the data that exists on rooms. I'm also probably going to delete all the data that exists on levels. I'm going to keep the tabs. I need the tabs so that these other Excel tabs know how to reference them, but I don't want any actual starting data here. Otherwise, it might be distracting. It might show me some information that I'm not expecting. It won't let me visually validate that I'm pulling my active projects information. So to do that, you notice there's a little lock symbol here. That's Excel telling me that this is a protected tab. So I have to go here to review and unprotect the sheet. Okay, this is a training class, so I'm going to tell you something really super secret here. I'm going to tell you the password to unlock anything about Spreadsheet Link's exports. Here's the deal. If you start changing data that Spreadsheet Link can't handle, it's going to cause problems and it's not going to work for you. So be careful of what exactly you change. Like, don't change anything here in column A and B. Don't change manually things on the header up here in rows 1, 2, and 3. So A and B, 1, 2, and 3, leave them alone. Don't change anything there if you're planning on bringing data back into Revit. Otherwise, it'll break stuff. But the password here is super secret, okay? It's all lowercase, and it's the word password. Type that in. This is now unlocked. So now what I can do is I can take the entirety here of the data, and I can select everything. Come on now, Shift key. Why can't I select that? Let's zoom in a little bit. Here we go. I don't know why it wouldn't let me select that. Shift key, select, there we go. And I'm going to right click and I'm going to clear the contents of those cells. And I'm also going to go here to the Home tab and I'm going to take my background infills and make it no fill. So it's empty. I'm going to take my borders just to be all kinds of pretty because I'm like that. And I'm going to say no borders. So this way, this starts out with just the headers up here and that's it. That's all it's going to have. Now, if you want to get real fancy, you could do something like Format Painter for this and Format Painter for this. You get like an empty first row. Like, it's not super needed. This is just me wanting things to look kind of cute, but that's, I mean, it's totally unnecessary, right? It's not needed at all. But you can save this way, right? Save this file. This is my template. This is what I'm going to make my workflow use in a minute here. Now I'm going to go over my levels, and I could do the exact same thing, right? I could go here to review. I could unprotect the sheet, password entered, and I can take all this data here, and I can right-click, and I can clear the contents, and I can also do the background of no fill and the borders of, well, no borders. Okay, I'm done. Let's just leave it like that for now. And I'm going to save this. I'm going to leave this on the Rooms tab when I save it, though, because I like this to be sitting out here on Rooms. This is what most people are going to be the most interested in. Okay, so there's my template. This is the file that I'm going to open the next time I do this process inside of Spreadsheet Link. I'm going to open that up directly. And I'm also going to tell this thing to automatically open. So you saw me manually open this before and get this older file that didn't have the Rooms tab and the Levels tab. But this time, I'm going to make Spreadsheet Link as a part of its saved settings. I'm going to make it open that for me. I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. You go here to Save Settings. You load your save. You use Save Settings to do an advanced save. Okay, advanced save here allows you to pre-pick the template worksheet you want this to open before it even goes and grabs Rooms and Levels, before it does either of those things. So I'm going to browse here on my desktop to that plumbing fixtures template. Where did I save that? Plumbing fixture template. There it is, right there. Okay. And with this, I'm going to save my settings out to a file. In fact, I'm going to overwrite that same plumbing fixture calculations file that I have out here on my desktop already. These were the settings that we originally saved for rooms that knew about my calculation. Right? That's what that was. So I'm going to save this, replace that file, settings saved successfully. Let's click OK here. And now let's see what happens if I shut this down. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to shut this down, and let's open that back up. So let's pan this down here so we can actually see some of the rooms. Spreadsheet Link. Let's collapse this up a little ways here so we can see some of what's going on back in the background. Load my settings from a file, and let's go grab that plumbing fixture calculations. Now remember, this file here, first step is to open that spreadsheet. So let's open this up and see what it does. Spreadsheet is already open. Look at that. And it already has my empty rooms tab. Now what it's doing is it's saying, hey, I'm supposed to grab rooms, but you've already got a rooms tab. I do. In fact, that's the rooms tab that I was using as the source for my data. It wants to know if I want to overwrite it. Yes, I do want to overwrite it. So when I do that, it grabs all my rooms, and it'll do all the maths for me as well. It also says that I've got a worksheet out here for levels, which of course I do, because I'm looking up data off of that as well for these tabs. So I'm going to overwrite the levels tab as well. And when it's all done, up here on the rooms tab, you'll notice that it has that occupancy checked. It has the hide unit symbol checked. It knows the exact order of the fields. It does all the maths. It's all ready to rock. It does all the work for me in this workflow. When I load that setting up as an end user, it now opens the spreadsheet that I know is working. It does the maths. It goes over here. It's already looking at my data. It already does all those calcs. All I have to do if I want these occupancies pushed back into my project is to apply the active worksheet to my project, and it dumps that data right in here. So it's updated 96 of my rooms, right? It's all done. You saw the workflow now. Open up the settings. This is what the end users do. Open up the settings, apply the rooms tab. They're done. They're done. Now, if I wanted to now take the graphics of this and bring that back into my project, I would just want to save this spreadsheet someplace. Now, I'm not going to save over that template because that's my template, right? I'm going to save this out as Project X P fixed calcs or something, whatever you want to call it, right? And I can save this to my project directory or wherever is appropriate so I can have this plumbing fixture calcs thing ready to go. So I'm going to save that. Save that, in my case, to my desktop here. Save that out. Wants to know if I want to open that file. In this case, no, I don't need to. All I needed to know was that it saved out my Excel file. So I'm not going to open it, and I'm going to shut down Spreadsheet Link because basically at this point, I'm done, right? I've done my room calcs. My occupancy CTC value here is filled out for every room that's occupiable based on the maths that I told the Excel file to use, and I've now saved that spreadsheet. But this is the final step of that workflow. I want to bring that spreadsheet back into Revit because those different methods of calculation, well, I want that formatted layout that I have in Excel to appear in Revit the same way. See, now natively, if this was a normal workflow, I'd be taking that Excel file and printing it to an image, and then I would import the image. Or I might take that Excel file and link it into a DWG as an OLE embedded object, and then I would link the DWG into my Revit model. The problem is every time there's an update to that Excel file, I have to manually print or manually open up the DWG and save it before I can update into Revit. And that's tedium. That's not the most efficient way to work. So what I want to do instead is I want to use this tool, Schedule Excel. I'm going to scroll down here so you can see where this is going to go. I'm looking at my Revit schedules and quantities right here. And I want to have this act like a Revit schedule. Obviously, it can't be a real Revit schedule because Revit doesn't know how to format the way that I have that table formatted with the grade rows and the groupings of level with the, how I did all the stuff. Revit can't do that normally. But with Schedule Excel, I can do that. So I'm going to add a reference to that Excel file. I'm going to open an Excel file that I've saved out. Let's see here. There's that Project X plumbing fixture calcs right there. And I'm going to open that up. This is going to give me all the tabs that are in that file. Now, some of these tabs, you notice I didn't go and fill out every single tab. You don't want to watch me do that in a little training like this. So I didn't fill out all of these tabs. They don't all know what they're supposed to do. Just the first tab in this example knows what it's supposed to do. But I want to bring this tab right into Revit directly, right? I want the basement level with the occupancy at some number. I want this whole thing here with a little notch cut out of the corner. I want the background cell infills level by level, right? I want this to all come in. Well, how do I do that? Well, I'm going to bring this active worksheet directly into my model. It's going to name it based on the tab name, WC Water Closet Method 1. I'm going to bring this in as a Revit Schedule view. Because of my graphics options here, it is going to prefix it with the link, space dash space. That way I can have all these Excel imported things, these Spreadsheet Link or Schedule Excel imported things grouped all together down here at the bottom of my list with Z as its prefix. You could choose a suffix, you could do whatever you needed. There's all kinds of fun things you can do here, but what I'm trying to do is exactly preserve what I've done in Excel. Preserve the cell heights, preserve the cell widths. If this happens to be longer than 20 inches tall, it's going to break into multiple tables. This is great for things like abbreviations, legends, and things like that. It's going to apply font colors and background cell colors and apply conditional formatting if you're doing conditional formatting on things. This tool set can do all of that. I'm not going to override any cell borders. I'm just going to bring in all the cells like they're supposed to be brought in. So I'm going to click OK here, and this is going to bring in just the one. It's only going to bring in one because that's all I've told it to bring in was the active spreadsheet. So you can see here, this has given me a sort of Revit schedule. Basically what this is, guys, is a heavily manipulated header in Revit, a schedule title that's manipulated with no data showing up. But what that does for me, oh, and by the way, this knows what the path is to that original file, and it knows to auto-update it so that when I open up my project, just like normal Revit links and DWG links update as you open, this can auto-update as well. And in this case, it's already up to date, so I don't have to worry about it. But if I ran this workflow again and that file got updated, it would actually help me update that, or I could force it to update before I print. But hey, look, I've got all this stuff here. I want to now bring that into a sheet. Like, let's go to my title sheet. This will be a good example. I've got a normal Revit sheet list out here, and now I'm going to take that water closet calc and throw this on the sheet as well. Notice how it lines up my header just like normal Revit schedules would. And if I zoom in closer, you'll notice that I have all the different line weights that came directly from Excel. Heavy outside lines, medium, thin, right? I've got the font size, I've got background cell infills. This is exactly formatting like I had it in the Excel file, but now it's in Revit. And it's told to auto-update. So what happens if I wanted to, say, have all the rest of the things in here, right? I only brought in the one part of this. I want to bring in the other parts. Well, the workflow that we developed today, I didn't fill out the other tabs that relate to this as well, so I can't really do that with our template from today. But what I can do, let me remove this guy here. I'm going to delete that schedule. I'm going to run this workflow one more time, beginning to end, not explain all the things that are happening. I'm just going to show you the speed at which this can happen. In fact, let me undo all those element attributes that I've modified back to the beginning, back before we did anything today. So my rooms have no occupancy on them. I've undone all of it. But I'm going to run this workflow as I have it saved, okay, with my full pre-existing, demo set here. I'm going to load my settings from a file. I'm going to browse to where this exists. In my case, it's on my C drive, assuming I can scroll to that. So I've got Spreadsheet Link, and in my case, it's in my Room Calcs folder here. But I'm going to open this up. You'll see everything happen exactly the same as it did for us before, right? It's going to grab my rooms. It's going to overwrite my rooms. It's going to overwrite my levels. It's got my water closet calcs now all filled out, my urinal calcs, lavs, drinking fountains, all the things all filled out because that's what it's supposed to do. I'm simply going to apply the active worksheet to my project. So 26 people here, 96 rooms updated. You can see it's exactly the same thing that we did in our beginning of this here. And I'm going to save this file out. Let's just go back to my desktop. And for the fun of it, let's do Project X plumbing fixture calculations. And because I want to show the difference here, I'm going to do 2 as a suffix. I'm not going to open it. I'm just going to shut this down. Now I'm going to bring in those calculations here into my schedules list, just like before. Same exact workflow, right? Add a reference to Project X plumbing fixture calculations, in this case, number 2. Open that up. This time, instead of just bringing in a single worksheet at a time, I'm going to bring in as many as I want. In fact, I'm going to grab everything, all of these tabs. I wouldn't normally do this. I'd probably only bring in the ones that I know I need for my project. But I'm going to bring in everything for you, all things, as a Revit schedule view, and it's going to bring in tab by tab each individual one as a Revit schedule. Water closet method calculation 1, method 2, method 3. Now it's going to do urinals. Now it's going to do probably the lavs is my guess. Yeah, lav method 1, 2, 3. Every one of those tabs that I've told it to bring in, it brings those graphics in directly. Now I often get the question asked of me, why don't you just put it all on one tab? And that's a great question. The reason why I've chosen not to do that is because when you work in different counties or states or provinces or cities or whatever, they might have different calculations, different governing authorities want you to follow different rule sets. In some cases, it might be like water closet method 3, urinal 1, lav 3, drinking fountain 1, right? And so now I've built this so that I can mix and match depending on whatever province or rule set I'm trying to follow. I don't have to have one big long one and then have to have every possible different iteration of those. I just have the individual calculations running, and then I can stack them together. You might choose to do this differently. If you always follow the same rule set, fantastic. Go for it. You build yours up the way that you want it. In my case, I've chosen to build it up as 10 individual tabs that I can stack up however I see fit. So what is the final result of this whole workflow? Let's put this back out here again. Water closet method 3, lav 1, urinal 1, lav 3, and drinking fountain 1. I'm just mixing and matching these guys all up here. And you can see how I've built my Excel spreadsheet. This looks like one continuous entire schedule, even though it's 4 individual tabs from Excel being brought in, but I can bring them in and drop them next to each other and very simply run an update on this just by rerunning my workflow, right? Super, super simple. So you've seen today in this example how you can go from an existing Excel spreadsheet, and by using the Spreadsheet Link and the Schedule Excel workflow together, how in a matter of minutes you can get this stuff brought in. And by the way, your update process is just as fast. In fact, it's probably even faster. Let's just say we take this dorm room here and we change this from, or this room here, 26 people, we change it to be something like a dormitory, right? 50 square foot instead of 20. Well, my maths have to change on this now. I would have fewer people in here if this was a dormitory. It's a horrible dormitory, but let's just use it as an example. In fact, let's use this one as well, because why not? So if we go here and swap this out for being a dormitory as well, that number needs to change here as well. 505 divided by 50, rounded up or down to the nearest person, would be either 10 or 11 people in this space instead of 25. So let's run that workflow. Let's see what happens here. Spreadsheet Link, load my settings from a file. I'm just going to go find where those settings are located, which for me is on my C drive. Again, that's where I've put these. Go grab my settings. It's the same calcs every single time. It's going to grab my rooms. It's going to grab my levels. I'm simply overwriting the rooms and levels. I'm applying back to my project the active worksheet. If you watch this number right here, we'll see this update to 10 in this case. Apply active worksheet. So I have 16 fewer people here and probably 15 fewer people on the other one. I've only updated 2 rooms in this case, but they're both on level 1. We just save over the top of that spreadsheet. Desktop. This one right here that I just saved out. Overwrite that. No, I don't want to open it, and I'm done. From an end user point of view, I'm effectively done. To update my sheet over here now, these numbers here on level 1 need to change drastically. So I'm going to go to Schedule Excel, and you'll notice that this file is now out of date. So let's just do an update all, and we'll see what happens. This is going to go through the process. Now, this is where I probably wouldn't have linked all 10. It's unnecessary to have all 10. I only need the 4 that I'm actually using. But this is going to go through and refresh this, and instead of 122 people, my level 1 should have fewer people, and then my number of men and women will be fewer, and my calculations here will update probably accordingly as well. Done. 91 people, 46 men, 46 women, 2 water closets instead of 3 water closets, and I'm ready to print. All told, if I hadn't been talking, I probably could have done this in 60 seconds less, but I mean, really, that's 60 seconds of workflow. Easy, easy, it's cake once you have it all set up. And your users can follow that very simply. All right, let's jump back into the PowerPoint here. I wanted to give you some information here about how, if you wanted to, you could obtain this suite of tools. How do you get it? Well, this is how you're going to get it. You're going to go to ctcsoftware.com. You can try this exact workflow out for yourself completely for free for 14 days if you don't have it already. If you do have it, certainly just use your license. But you go on CTC's website to the BIM Project Suite 2021. And you may have noticed today that I was running this in 2018. This automatically installs on top of and runs in the last 5 versions of Revit, 17 through 21. So one installation installs in all of them. You can try it free yourself. If you already have it, you've just seen today how you can use this in this fashion, but you can get this suite of tools and make your life a whole lot easier. Install it on your Revit environment with Revit closed, and then you can do all the things. I want to thank you for the time that you've given us today. And certainly sign up for our webinars as you have today. Come back for more. I'm going to be doing a lot more of these instructional type webinars. So if you've got ideas that you want me to cover, let me know, and I'm all about talking about those things.